My name is Marissa Chen. I'm 31, and last night I learned just how small a family's love can feel when it's conditional. You're a failure, my father growled, slamming his whiskey tumbler so hard against the granite counter that it chipped. You've wasted every opportunity we gave you. What do you even do now? Drive people around? Patch up websites like a tech intern? The silence in my sister's luxury condo in Palo Alto was instant and suffocating. The air smelled of rosemary chicken and judgment. Across the island, my cousin Ava looked down at her sparkling water, biting back a grin. My Uncle David coughed into his napkin to hide a chuckle. My older brother James didn't even bother with subtlety. He leaned back in his chair like a judge who'd already handed down a sentence. And my mother? She kept folding napkins. Not once did she look up. Before we go on, what would you do if this were your family? Drop a comment. I want to hear how you would have handled it. Let's keep going. It's pathetic, my dad continued. You left the firm like you had something better lined up. So where's the success? Where's the pride? All I see is wasted potential and cheap shoes. He motioned toward my charcoal gray flats like they offended him. You're not our Marissa anymore. You're just disappointing. Ava laughed, out loud this time. Even Aunt Lillian leaned in and muttered something that made her wheeze with amusement. And no one, not one person, stopped them. I felt my hands tremble under the counter, my breath quicken. I could have snapped. I could have thrown back every insult I'd buried over the years. But I didn't. I stood, slowly, calmly. I straightened the hem of my dark green dress and smoothed my palms down its sides. Okay, I said softly, not with defeat, with finality. And I walked out. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally did, about myself. I didn't cry that night. I sat alone in my studio apartment in Mountain View, sipping tea and staring out at the city lights. Because when pain reaches its boiling point, it transforms. Not into rage, not into revenge, but into fuel. And in the morning, I had a meeting with 5 people who had built companies from the ground up, investors, billionaires, and they were walking in with me. Fire that builds. I didn't sleep much that night. I didn't need to. Because at 3:44 a.m. I got a secure message from Elias on my private line. Then 2 more came in, one from Priya and one from Jonas. Each message said the same thing. We're ready. By 8:30 a.m., 5 sleek, black electric sedans rolled silently into the cul-de-sac where I had walked away just hours earlier. They lined the curb in front of my parents' Palo Alto home, a sprawling glass and stone monument my father bragged about to anyone who would listen. Inside, I imagined the usual post-conflict routine unfolding. My mother flipping pancakes. Blueberries this time, I was sure. Her go-to olive branch. Soft jazz on the speakers. Forced small talk to cover the embarrassment of the night before. But this time, the music outside was louder. Engines whispered. Doors opened in unison. And out stepped 5 titans in clean, deliberate lines. Not people who ran companies, people who built empires. Elias Monroe, artificial intelligence pioneer, net worth $4,900,000,000, 0 cents. Priya Desai, biotech visionary, $3,200,000,000, 0 cents. Jonas Krieger, logistics and defense tech, $2,700,000,000, 0 cents. Celine Tran and Malik Rowe, co-founders of the fintech platform that just acquired 3 banks last quarter. They walked up the steps without hesitation. One of them rang the bell. Inside, my father answered, still in his robe, mug of coffee in hand, ego barely waking. Can I help you? Good morning, boss, Elias said calmly, nodding toward me as I stepped forward, dressed in a sharp obsidian pantsuit. My heels clicked like punctuation marks across the stone entryway. My father's face twisted. Marissa, what is this? Behind him, Ava peeked over his shoulder, color draining from her face. I smiled. Not kindly, not apologetically, sharply. Did no one tell you? I said coolly. As of last week, I acquired full control of Altira Holdings. His jaw clenched. You what? I own the firm now, the one you said I'd never be good enough for. And they, I gestured behind me, are my partners. Together we controlled more than just the firm. We controlled companies his friends begged to be let into. And then I walked in. Because it wasn't just their house anymore. It was mine now. And the silence inside? It wasn't guilt. It was fear. Only now, the knives were metaphorical. And I held every single one of them. You're lying, my father finally croaked. His voice cracked like old timber in a winter storm. I turned and looked him dead in the eyes, calm, cold, controlled. Then I reached into my structured black tote and pulled out a crisp manila folder. These are the acquisition documents, I said, handing it to him. Dated, notarized, effective as of 7:00 a.m. today. He stared down at the pages like they were written in another language. But James, my older brother, snatched them out of his hands. The golden boy, the heir apparent, the one who was always so much more serious than I was. His eyes scanned fast, his brow furrowed. She's not lying, he muttered, voice low, like admitting it was physically painful. This is real. She owns Altira Holdings now. He flipped to the final page, then froze. And these names on the back, that's half the Valley's private investors. Tech, real estate, biotech. She didn't just buy it, she built an empire around it. Lillian made a sound like she'd swallowed glass. Somewhere behind her, a fork clattered to the floor. But my mother, she finally blinked, her voice barely audible. You bought it? I nodded. While you were all mocking my freelance contracts and calling me directionless, I was quietly founding LiarTech, a cybersecurity firm. Maybe you missed the headline, but it was acquired for $410 million, 0 cents, a few months ago. I paused, letting the weight land. Most of it in stock, the rest, liquid. I used it to build leverage, recruited your competitors, and bought the very company this family worships like a shrine. My father's expression hardened, ashen but furious. You think owning something makes you powerful? He barked, stepping forward. You think this gives you respect? No, I said softly. My silence last night did. He flinched. I could have yelled. I could have begged for them to see me. But I didn't have to. I let you think I failed, I continued, because sometimes the most brutal lesson is the one you walk into blind. James stood now too, fists clenched. You planned this, he hissed. You wanted to humiliate us. I stepped forward, measured and calm. No, James. I waited until I didn't need revenge anymore. This isn't about you, or Dad, or your little empire of expectations. This is about me finally stepping into my power. If you felt that shift, the moment she took back her power, don't miss what happens next. Hit subscribe and follow Marissa's story as the boardroom tables turn and the past comes knocking. I turned to the group behind me. This is about growth, I said, about what happens when the ones you cast out stop knocking and start building their own kingdom. Elias checked his watch. We've got a Northbridge board meeting in 20 minutes. I smiled. No rush, I moved it. My father's brow creased. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and scrolled. Your old office lease expired at midnight. The holding company is now mine, which means, effective today. I gestured to the sleek marble floors beneath us. This house is the new headquarters. Uncle David sputtered. You can't just... I already did. Jessica sprang to her feet, face flushing red. You're just trying to make us feel small. I raised an eyebrow. No, Jessica. You made yourselves small the moment you bet against me. We moved into the living room. My team got to work. Priya reviewed transition contracts on her tablet. Jonas was already on a secure call with our legal counsel. Celine and Malik were coordinating onboarding for the AI division we just folded in. And my father? He sat stiffly on the leather couch, watching as the legacy he once lorded over slipped like sand through his fingers. This was my empire, he murmured. This was supposed to be James's future. I met his gaze without flinching. You shouldn't have burned the bridge you thought I'd never be powerful enough to rebuild. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Do you remember Carson Fields? I asked casually, scrolling through a file. Dad blinked. What? The auditor from back when you were still untouchable. He stiffened. You had him fired after he flagged irregular records in Northbridge's books. Turns out he kept copies. I turned my phone toward them, and when I acquired Northbridge, I gained full access to the archives, including transfers from a consulting fund to a real estate shell company in Montana. Jessica leaned forward. What are you saying? I placed the phone on the table. A PDF lit up the screen. Wire transfers. 20162022. I'm saying the money Dad funneled out of the company wasn't just hidden. It was criminal. My father stood, panic flashing. You don't understand corporate finance. Tax evasion, embezzlement, possibly money laundering, I said coolly, depending on how the offshore transfers check out. You wouldn't, my father said, pointing a trembling finger at me, voice rising. You wouldn't ruin your own father's life. I stepped forward, slowly and deliberately. You already ruined mine, I said. When you stood up last night and called me a disgrace in front of everyone, you didn't just insult me. You set fire to every last thread tying us together. His jaw worked as if he might speak, but the pride in him strangled the words before they could come out. So I leaned in, my voice low and precise. But don't worry, I whispered. I'm not turning you in. Yet. I held up my phone. The documents are with my attorney. The files are sealed and they'll stay that way. Unless something happens to me or the company. Play nice, and I'll let you walk away with your name intact. The air in the room shifted, like someone had cracked a window in a pressure chamber. You knew, James murmured, his eyes locked on our father. You knew all of it, and you still stood there, pretending this family was built on something solid. Dad turned to him, reaching out. James slapped his hand away. Don't. But I wasn't looking at either of them anymore. My eyes turned to my mother, silent, frozen, on the edge of the sofa. Not a word this entire time. Why? Didn't you say anything? I asked. You let him mock me for years. You watched him tear me down for dreaming differently. She met my eyes finally, her expression unreadable. Because, she said after a pause, you were always too sensitive. You cried over scratches on your bike. You sulked when your paintings weren't framed. I thought if I hardened you, you'd survive. You didn't raise me to survive, I said, voice cracking. You raised me to stay quiet. Behind me, my team stood in silence. Then Aaliyah said, We need a decision, boss. You want to rebuild Northbridge clean, or keep pretending there's anything left worth saving? I looked around that room, at the people who once measured my worth in obedience, and I smiled. We rebuild, I said, from zero, without a single brick laid by liars. My mother stood, stunned. You'll cut us off? You cut me off a long time ago. She reached for me. Marissa, wait, we can still. But I turned to my team. We're done here. And we walked out, all 6 of us. No yelling, no drama. Just closure. The front door clicked shut behind us. Outside, I looked back once. It wasn't home anymore. It was history. And for the first time in years, I didn't carry it. The morning sun broke through the clouds as we reached the cars, and I stepped into the future I built with my own hands. I could still feel their silence behind me. The weight of my father's crumbled authority, James's shattered image of being the rightful heir, my mother's guilt, frozen on her face like stone. And yet, none of them followed. Not one. They stayed in that house, trapped in the world they built from control, pride, and lies. I left it behind without looking back. I slid into the back seat of the lead sedan. Elias sat beside me, already pulling up strategy briefs on his tablet. Jonas turned from the passenger seat, eyes sharp. Say the word, he said, and we'll clean house. Every Northbridge legacy exec gone. I shook my head. Not all of them. Keep a few. but I want loyalty audits on every VP, full reports, past behavior, management style, how they treated junior staff. If they abused power, they're out. Priya tapped notes into her phone. So you're sending a message? I'm rewriting the culture, I said, watching the Silicon Valley skyline pass us by. We don't humiliate people for struggling, we don't mock risk takers, and we don't let power reward cruelty. The sedan merged onto the freeway, engines humming like a war drum under the surface. My reflection in the tinted window stared back. But it wasn't the woman from last night. My eyes were steel, my posture anchored. That afternoon we held the press conference at the Mercer Grand Hotel in downtown San Jose. The media had already caught wind. Rumors of a hostile takeover, silent buyouts, boardroom drama. But they weren't ready for a 31-year-old woman in heels that didn't falter and a voice that didn't shake. I stepped to the microphone. My name is Marissa Chen, I said. As of this morning, I am the majority shareholder and CEO of Altira Holdings, formerly Northbridge Ventures. Cameras flashed. Gasps echoed. For years, this company thrived on exclusion and inherited power. That ends today. We are not a legacy, we are a vision. The reporter asked, Ms. Chen, how did this happen overnight? I smiled. It didn't. It took years of being underestimated. Another voice. What about your family? Will they remain involved? I didn't flinch. They're welcome to rebuild their reputations. But Altira is no longer a family business. Later, I stood on the balcony. The city pulsed below. Elias joined me with 2 glasses of champagne. They'll talk about that speech for weeks, he said. I don't want speeches, I murmured. I want impact. You're already making it. With dinner, I said quietly. It broke something in me. But not in the way they expected. You stood up, he nodded, and didn't look back. That night, in my penthouse, I opened my laptop. Hundreds of emails. Congratulations, jealousy, old teachers, long-lost relatives. But one froze me. Subject: I owe you an apology. From Dad. I didn't open it. I closed the laptop and stared out across my city. They had watched me fall for years. Now, they'd have to watch me rise. The next morning, I walked into the new Altira HQ, top floor of Marlowe Tower. No legacy rot, no gatekeepers. Just people who believed in rebuilding something real. Board signed off, Elias said, meeting me by the elevator. You're CEO. No challenge. Good, I said. Let's make it count. That night, I drove past my old neighborhood. I stopped at the red light outside my childhood home. There they were, my parents, sitting on the porch. No words, no pride, just one long, quiet stare. And watching what they lost. And me, finally free. I turned the corner and drove on. Into my future. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or told to stay in your place, this story is for you. I'm Marissa Chen, and I've built something no one believed I could, not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. Drop a comment below, tell me what moment made you finally choose yourself. I read them all, and if my journey speaks to you, subscribe and stay with me. Because here's the truth. You don't need permission to become powerful. You just need a moment of clarity and the courage to walk forward even when no one claps. I did. You can too.